Bloomfield's Mayor Suzette DeBeatham-Brown is one of only two people of color to hold top positions in Connecticut cities, despite our state being more diverse than many of our nearest neighbors. In order to foster a more equitable future, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, along with the Campaign School at Yale, are holding a 2-day training event that aims to give communities of color what they need to know in order to run for local office, with advice from experts like Mayor DeBeatham-Brown. We'd like to thank our premier sponsor at Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks. Check them out at digitalbackoffice.com or paloaltonetworks.com. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or our member municipal leaders. Mayor, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so very much for having me.
So one of the big reasons we asked you to join us today was you are participating in this CCM event we are doing soon called Representation Matters. And we're doing it out of the belief that everyone deserves a say in their local government, that glass ceilings should be shattered, and that representation is one of the kind of fundamentals of American government. And kind of from the outset, the fact that we're holding this event recognizes that communities of color have been underrepresented in our town halls and capitals historically. What are some of the barriers that prevent a person of color from running for office?
So once again, thank you for having me. So here in Bloomfield, I think we're very lucky, right? I am the mayor, the first Black female mayor of the town of Bloomfield, but on our current town council, we have 3 other individuals of color. We have Councilor Curtin, who is a Black male, and Councilors Stephanie Calhoun and Danielle Wong, who are Black females. And on our town council, in councils past, we've had representation. But I'm often told that I am one of 2 women here in the state of Connecticut in 169 towns, right? So we obviously see that there is a little problem. I think when it comes to public office, some people are intimidated by the old guard, those who've been there for forever and a day. And some people might feel like it's just an uphill battle and they don't have the resources and or the support to run for public office. I believe honestly that change really does start at your local level. And even though you might be afraid, and even though you might be the only one that looks like you that's running, I say do it afraid. I say do it anyway. If you believe that you have something to offer, definitely do it. It's about being at the table. When I was running for election back in 3 years ago, I was told either you're setting the agenda or you're on the agenda. And I wanted to make sure that my voice was heard and that people that look like me was represented. So I wanted to set the agenda. Yeah.
You mentioned, obviously yourself being the first female mayor of color of the town. There's some people on the boards. Is there anything that you see that's unique about Bloomfield that made that possible? Or is it just that there was enough people with the will?
So I think at the time, the council that we had previously was there for forever, right? And I think some of the decisions that they made, the town wasn't too happy with, and the town was ready for change. So I think we were at the right place at the right time. Also, Bloomfield is a little unique because I think we're like 57 to 60% Black. So it was also, I think our residents realized that it was time for us to have new people with a renewed vision of what the town could be and could look like. And of course, having people that was there to amplify their voices and the things that mattered to them. So I think it was just the right time, being at the right place at the right time.
And how did you personally make the decision that you wanted to represent your community in Bloomfield? Like, how did you know that you were ready?
Wow. To be absolutely honest, I didn't know if I was ready. But what I did know was there were conversations that were taking place. We were talking about Tamar Rice at the time. We were talking about racial profiling at the time. I had always served my community on different committees. You know, I'm a community servant. So I always tried to get involved. My husband and I, we still are chaplains for the Bloomfield Police Department. So when these conversations were being had, my voice was out there loud and strong, like, no, we have to make changes. Our community have to be reflective. You know, we have to be mindful of how we're treating each other and things like that. So I got involved in conversations, and it was those conversations that led to, hey, you know, why don't you do more with that voice? And I was approached a couple times, and I did turn it down for a couple of reasons. At the time, my children were younger. And I did have in the back of my head that, wow, you know, there's some people on council that've been on council for years upon top of years upon top of years. There's no way. But the more the conversations went on, the more sometimes I was the only me in a room, right? I spoke up for the community. I spoke up for my children, especially my son, and all the other men, you know, in my life, my husband, my brothers, friends. And I thought it became more and more apparent that in order for true change to happen, your voices have to be amplified. You have to be represented, and your voices have to be amplified. And you might have to yell and scream that same story over and over and over again until change happens. Yeah. So I think after a while of lending my voice to different conversations and talking to different people about how we could be better and do better, it, you know, it was just a natural progression. It was scary, right? Yeah. It was scary because while I had served on different commissions and committees and task force, I never ran for public office. So that was scary. So you have that long conversation with your family, and you have a longer conversation with yourself. And you make that commitment. You make that commitment to adding my voice to being a part of the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's interesting, I think, that in what you just said was you mentioned that, you know, you didn't just jump right into being the mayor.
Right.
You have you were doing other things before, and you were involved in committees and stuff. And I know part of this training, we are also encouraging people not just to run for, you know, the top offices like you have, but also there's boards, there's, you know, smaller ways that people can get involved and help, and perhaps that would lead into bigger things. But, you know, if someone's intimidated by the idea of like a big election, they could start with something smaller, but it starts with the idea that you want to serve your community.
Definitely. And that's what it has to be about first, right? So here in Bloomfield, we run for council, and then we vote for mayor and deputy mayor. So I was running for council. Becoming the mayor was a whole different situation. But I agree. It's about getting involved in your community. It's about committing, right? So whether it's you're going to be on the beautification committee, or you're going to be on the Celebrate Your Town committee, or the library board, or the Board of Education, or your task force, or your human relations committee, whatever it is, you have to see it as a stepping stone to helping to make your town better, right? And then from there, I think it'll be a natural progression. Yeah. You'll see that, okay, so my voice is really helpful here, and I believe that I've added to being right here, but I think that I can add also to being here. And I think people will see that servant heart, and once again, that can be a little Pollyanna-ish, but people can see your desire to help to be a part of the solution, and not just your desire for your own personal gain. There's a difference there. Yeah. And the way the world is right now, that desire is to be a part of a bigger solution.
There's a lot of problems that in need of those solutions, certainly.
Yeah. It can't be about you, because politics after the election is definitely not about you. It's about now trying to reach across the aisles of this, just trying to be bipartisan with the decisions and the policies that are coming down for the best interest of your community.
Yeah. In a Hartford Current article about the training sessions that we're doing coming up, you said that there was some pushback when you did run for mayor, that you ran anyway, and it brought to the mind, nevertheless, she persisted. What was it like to experience pushback, racism in some cases, and then persist and, in fact, win an election?
So it was interesting, right? Because I tell this story all the time. When I was younger, we lived on the borderline of Hartford and Bloomfield. So I thought I could just choose and tell which town I lived in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would always say Bloomfield because I thought Bloomfield was so wonderful. It was close enough to Hartford, but it was far enough away. The school systems were great. The neighborhoods looked really good. So I've always said I lived in Bloomfield before I actually lived in Bloomfield, but that's just between us. But you also hear that back in the 70s, Bloomfield was an all-American city. And here we are now. And you're saying that I don't represent you. You don't like the way that I look. You don't like the way that I sound. You don't like my hair. It was fuel for me, actually, because we had come such a long way as a town, as a people. And there was things that I was offering my community. I was serving my community. And those voices, even though they were there, they were so, I wouldn't say that they were mute because I heard them, but I listened to them really on that low volume because there were so many other people that were supporting the slate, the six of us that were running at the time, and excited about the change and the choice and the trust and the transparency that we were promoting, that those voices, they didn't become amplified until I was in my quiet moment thinking, really, is this the right thing to do? And when you have those thoughts and you remember the reason why you're actually doing this, it kind of drowns them out. That's why I said, sometimes you have to do it scared. You get yourself a group of people that support you, and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Because what you have to feel like what you're offering is really in the best interest of your community.
So really, being willing to take that risk for your own personal needs to help others.
Yes. Yes.
There was another quote in that same article out of the Current, where you said, in politics, and you said before, you're either setting the agenda or you're on the agenda. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Why it's important to set the agenda in town government?
So as I said, I believe that change really happens at the local level, mm-hmm. but I believe that everything that happens at the local level affects every individual that lives in that community. Mm-hmm. And mostly it's going to affect your pocket, right? So we know that in communities, you have people that are well off, you have people that are in the middle, and then you have people that are at the opposite end of the spectrum. And if the agenda is only focused on one set of people, everyone else loses. Right. So if I am making a decision based on what I see out of my window, everyone that's not looking out of the same window in the same neighborhood is going to be adversely affected. So when the agenda items come up, where do we spend our money? Which roads are we focusing on? Which side of town are we focusing on? These programs, how many people are these programs going to affect? It's really important that when we're sitting down and we're looking at the agenda, that we look at it holistically. Mm-hmm. We look at it through lenses of diversity, equity and inclusion lens. We look at it through lens of our median income. We look at it through the lens of our ALICE population, because we do have a lot here in Bloomfield. We also have a lot of seniors, right? Mm-hmm. I've been told that Bloomfield is one of the oldest towns according to age, because we have great senior facilities like Doncaster and Seabury. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that we're not being skewed, right? And that once again, all the voices are heard. And I think that's what it means about setting the agenda, that the agenda looks like the population and the makeup of our town.
Yeah, so I guess part of what I'm hearing you say there is you got to be able to kind of take yourself out of your own perspective and everything. And I know that as part of our partnership with the National League of Cities on a program they were doing called Race, Equity, and Leadership Program, which kind of inspired some of the stuff we're doing now. We had on Leon Andrews from the National League, and he kind of explained the difference between the policies, practices, and procedures that were intentional And then there's this other group that were inadvertent, and he refers to the inadvertent ones as systemic racism. As a person of color, is it easier for you to have the perspective and identify these issues, helping you to say, this policy has to go because you can see how it's hurting certain communities?
Yes, because it's easy. For instance, right? If we're looking at two projects and we're coming to budget season, right? So we're going to have to make a decision on the projects that get funded and the project that doesn't get funded, right? So if we're looking at roads, we're looking at funding roads, or we're looking at funding roads, or let's say a solar farm, right? You know that people there's certain roads in town that only gets patched and never really gets paved. But there's other roads in town that have been paved at least twice, right? So we're going to now say, well, because these roads have been paved already, let's take this money and put it towards a solar farm. But you have roads on the other side of town that haven't been paved at all. They've just been patched. Yeah. So you have to be able to sit there and make an argument, because you only get one vote, right? And make an argument and say, you know what, guys, we might have to look at things a little bit differently. Let's stop looking out of your window, right? And because your roads have been paved at least twice, and now let's look out of someone else's window. So, and that's very simplistic. I don't want to get too detailed. Yeah. But we have those conversations, and you have to have people in the room that say, wait a minute, we have to be equitable, and we have to be fair, because everyone in our town deserves to enjoy living here, working here, playing here, raising their families here. Everyone has to feel like they are as important as our next neighbor, no matter which neighborhood you live in, no matter what side of the town you live on. You have to make sure that everyone is represented well. And sometimes I believe some people can get caught up of just looking out their own window.
Yeah, that's really important. We talk about the perspective aspect of it, how we all need to, or at least people in local office need to try to look outside themselves and see it from all those angles. But the representation also comes in when you have someone who, in fact, does live on the other side of town where the road needs to be fixed. They can say firsthand, excuse us, the road over here. So it's, we all strive to have the good perspective, but we also all come with different perspectives, and that's where getting the variety of representation really. You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. This is an ongoing thing we've been doing at CCM with these programs. I know you participated in our CCM Cares series, the Communities Advancing Racial Equity series, in which you said it was important for public education that what's going on benefit everybody. When Black and brown students see teachers that look like them, when they understand that we are concerned about their success, that's when they succeed. Yes. What needs to change in our education policies that will help make our public education system more equitable in Connecticut?
So I do believe, and I think it's coming down, or there's a bill that's going to encourage recruiting teachers of color. I think that's going to be very important. I think having male teachers of color in our schools as teachers, as principals, I think it's important that we see role models that look like us. That helps us to understand that with a little bit of hard work and some determination, that you too can do it. I think it's just like what you're trying to do with this program here, trying to encourage Black and brown people to run for public office. When they see people that look like them, it's easier for them to take that leap. When students see people that look like them, and especially if they're coming from a difficult background, there's a possibility, right? Because then now there's a balance. I can choose this, or I can choose this. I think it's important for us in education, but also in every aspect of society. It's good to walk in and see someone that looks like you in town hall, that's in the leadership role or the directorship role. Listen, trust me, I am so excited, right? And I might be just jumping all over the place. There is a VP that looks like me. Yes, we had President Obama, and that was wonderful. That was great. I was excited, but oh my goodness, we have someone who looks just like me. She's Asian American. She's also Caribbean American, has some Caribbean descent in her, and she's a sorority sister. She is an Alpha Kappa Alpha, and Sorority Incorporated, and it's wonderful, right? Yeah. So we talk about the glass ceiling. That ceiling has been shattered. There's glass all over the place. And we have the opportunity now to sweep them up and to march into any position that we feel like we can contribute to and that we feel like we're qualified for. I mean, how much better can we, really?
It doesn't get better than that.
Well, once we get the first Black female president, it'll just be the icing on the cake.
Well, I guess we'll find out in 4, 8, 12 years, one of these days.
Exactly.
So I know we just talked a little bit about education and things like that, but also one other kind of arena that people don't necessarily think about, but is important to talk about with systemic racism is health. How health outcomes, even, given everything else the same, health outcomes for minorities are often not as good as they are for white Americans. And specifically, something that's come to light more recently has been how some say that the rollout of the vaccine for COVID has been kind of changed by some of these issues. And that the rollout is leaving behind Black and Latino residents. Has COVID affected our communities of color in Connecticut differently, and how do we address that?
So my day job is at the health district. So we've seen how COVID-19 have affected Black and Brown individuals, right? But then we go back to the comorbidity. It's that they had underlying conditions, and they're having underlying conditions because those conditions weren't treated. Those conditions weren't diagnosed. Either they're uninsured or they're underinsured. So all of that was coming to the top with COVID-19. Why did it affect Black and Brown people so much more than it did everyone else? And it goes back to the underlying conditions of not being insured or being underinsured. And now that we have the vaccine, you have the double-edged sword where some people are saying, I'm afraid of getting the vaccine because of what happened years and years and years and years ago, experimenting on Black people with vaccinations. And then you have those who want to get it but can't get it because it's not being offered in their area. I think now they're opening more clinics. I think we're trying to get the information out now in other in other communities and trying to find community champions, right? If you go to church and your pastor says such and such and such, you are more apt to believe him than you are a medical professional. So we're trying to now think of outside the box ways to get them educated and to also have the opportunity, if you choose to get the vaccine, that opportunity is there for you. So I know that we're doing some deliberate things here in Bloomfield, and I think other communities are also starting to understand that they need to do some deliberate things, some outside the box thinking to make sure that we're being fair and equitable across the board.
Just an aside, you personally, do you plan on getting the vaccine when it's available to you?
So I am consulting my physician because I do have some underlying conditions. But as soon as I get the green light, and it's my turn.
When it's everybody's turn.
Because I still have to wait for my turn.
Yeah, obviously, people should talk to their doctors and make sure that it's all right for them. But
correct. But I can tell you that I do have family members who are in the medical field that have gotten it, and I trust them impeccably. So
they've gotten it. They're feeling good now, and
it. They're doing great. One of my cousins, he's a physician in New York. His name is Wayne, and he keeps me abreast.
All the latest. Thanks, cousin Wayne.
Yes.
So let's move on from COVID and talk about something a little bit happier. What maybe during this last year of COVID have you seen that has given you hope in Bloomfield? Are there some good stories, some things that have, made you feel positive about the future that people have risen to the occasion?
At the end of last year, Bloomfield was given the honor of the nicest city in the state of Connecticut by Reader's Digest.
Wow.
In the 70s, we were the all-American city. But since then, we've just been wonderful. I talk about it all the time. I get to serve the best town in the state of Connecticut. And now Reader's Digest has proven that we are.
It's agreed that you're the nicest.
So this came about by one of our residents, putting us up for this honor. We had the storm and we lost power, and she had a freezer full of food, and she needed to ask her neighbors if they could help her out because she didn't want her food to go bad. They got her a freezer. They took care of her. The thing about Bloomfield is we are a small town, but we really know how to come together. For COVID-19, we had people making masks for other people. The Congregational Church had someone making masks and just hanging them up outside the church. Anyone could get it. We had seniors making masks. We had our businesses, Otis Elevator, Home Depot, all providing face shields and masks and donating it to residents as well as to our first responders. We as a town, we know how to come together. We had a couple racial incidents over the summer after we did the George Floyd memorial. We also had a few vigils, and an incident happened with a young boy who was being harassed in a local store while his mom was just trying to buy him a bike. Someone was going around calling him the N-word. That person didn't live here. They only came to shop here. But when our residents heard of that story, this young man got bikes donated to him. People wrote him letters to let him know that that's not how the world is and that's not how the community is. So I am really grateful to be the leader of the council in this wonderful town. We as a town know how to come together. We have a partnership between a couple of our churches, the Congregational Church, First Cathedral, and the Rehoboth Church of God, that provides food for a backpack program for some of our students who are in need. The church provides a hot meal every Saturday and grocery every Saturday. I was able to partner with Mayor Sherry Cantor from West Hartford and Mayor Don Trinks from Windsor in an event where we were able to distribute over 1,300 boxes of food. That's great. I'm sorry, over 3,000 boxes of food to our residents. So we know how to come together. The First Cathedral is still distributing food. Our community, we're small, we're very diverse. We have some differences, but when it comes to showing up for each other, we show up. I have the council that I serve with, Republicans and Democrats, but when it comes time to do for our community, we hunker down and we definitely put our community first. So I'm very glad about that. And that's one of the rewards, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of long hours, not door knocking to either get signatures or to convince people to vote for you, and raising money is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and that can be daunting sometimes, and it can be a turnoff sometimes. But the reward of serving your community kind of outweighs that. It's almost like a mother, she's going through labor and the pain of labor, but when she sees that baby, the pain goes away, So, yeah.
So that's the message to anyone who's thinking about running out there, is that it's worth it.
It's so worth it. The investment of time, energy, and talent for a better community is so worth it.
Yeah. And I guess kind of one last thing, talking about that better community, are there any projects coming up this year, maybe some that even got put off because of all the pandemic last year, that you're really looking forward to in this year, something you're excited about?
So I'm hoping, we usually do a Celebrate Bloomfield every year. And last year, of course, because of COVID, we couldn't. but we're planning. We are planning, hoping for good weather, hoping that we get to open up and come out and really celebrate our town. I think after COVID, it's almost a year of COVID, and I know that we still have a while to go, but being able to come out and celebrate each other and breathe and relax and help to rebuild, help our communities to recover. I'm looking forward to that. The council, we just wrapped up our second day of retreat last Saturday, and we have some great ideas. There's things coming down. We just passed a public art policy. We're looking at a TIF districts, 3 of them. We're looking at a brand new library. We're looking at doing work around equity and diversity and inclusion. It's an exciting time to be a servant of your community, and I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the work yet ahead to be done.
Well, that's good. I think that's what we want, and everyone wants in their public servants.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor, thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for your time, and I am looking forward to the event.
Yes,
February
representation
13th,
matters. Everybody, February 13th.
And February 27th. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And even though I'm already in elected office, I do plan on attending the 13th and the 27th. Of course, I'm going to be speaking, but I want to also get some of the knowledge in.
13th,
as well.
Because we're doing that with the campaign school at Yale. It's working with us on this one. So that's going to be, I'm sure, some good stuff there.
Yes.
All right. Well, Mayor, thank you so much for speaking with us today. And
thank you.
Good luck on all those projects this year.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank our guest, Mayor DeBeatham-Brown. Check out www.ccmcares.com for more information about how you can sign up for this special 2-day educational experience. We'd like to thank our premier sponsors, Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks, who you can check out at digitalbackoffice.com and paloaltonetworks.com. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for our CCM chat series on our YouTube page.